March 17th, 1943. Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. The air reeks of oil, rust, and desperation. Lieutenant Commander James Richardson, a man whose career is measured in repair schedules, stares at the wounded USS Wahoo, SS-238. A 3-foot jagged tear, courtesy of a Japanese depth charge off New Guinea, runs along her starboard pressure hull. She's riding low, seawater still weeping from the wound. Commander Dudley "Mush" Morton, Wahoo's legendary skipper, stands beside him, his face granite. "How long, Richardson?" Morton's voice is deceptively quiet, each word sharp. Richardson consults his clipboard, the numbers a death sentence for operational momentum. 12 days minimum, sir. Dry dock, cutting, welding, testing. 12 days. Morton doesn't blink. 12 days my boat isn't killing Japanese ships. 12 days some other skipper risks his neck in my patrol zone. Richardson feels the weight of the unspoken math. With only 47 submarines to cover 64 million square miles of ocean, every boat in dock is a catastrophic loss. The repair backlog is a silent, strangling threat, a logistical choke point that could lose the Pacific War faster than any enemy fleet. In his office, Captain Charles Lockwood, commander of Submarine Forces Pacific, stares at a wall map dotted with red enemy pins. His chief of staff delivers the grim update. Wahoo is 9th in line for one of 3 dry docks, a minimum 3-week wait. Intelligence reports chatter of a major Japanese convoy forming near Truk Lagoon, right in Wahoo's abandoned sector. The system is failing. The strict, time-consuming doctrine of dry dock-only repairs is becoming an existential threat. As Lockwood grinds his teeth in frustration, a figure moves through the chaotic shipyard below. He's not an officer. He's a 34-year-old Navy diver named Robert Payne, a man with Mississippi River mud in his veins and a head full of unorthodox ideas. He's heard about Wahoo's predicament. While superiors see an insolvable problem, Payne sees a brutal equation. 12 days in dock equals thousands of tons of enemy supplies delivered. He makes a decision. Bypassing the chain of command, he finds Richardson on the smoke-filled dock. He doesn't salute. He states a fact that sounds like madness. "Sir, I can weld her shut, in the water, in 1 day." The officer looks at the diver as if he's just suggested flying to the moon. The impossible has been proposed. The war is about to change in a way no manual ever predicted. Lieutenant Commander Richardson stared at the diver, Robert Payne, as if he had proposed mutiny. "You read the Bureau of Ships report, Payne. Underwater welding below 60 feet has a 73% failure rate. It's suicide and bad engineering." Payne, a man built like a dock piling with calm, water-blue eyes, didn't flinch. "The report is wrong, sir. They're using the wrong technique." Payne's background was a red flag to any career officer. No college, a ship's fitter turned diver, a tinkerer who'd spent the year after Pearl Harbor in unauthorized experiments on sunken hulls. He described his eureka moment during the salvage of USS California. While others patched from inside, he'd secretly fabricated electrodes with a thicker waterproof flux and discovered that short, intermittent welds prevented hydrogen embrittlement, the hidden killer of underwater seams. "It's not a continuous bead, sir. It's a stitch. Let the metal cool. At 90 feet, my welds hold at 80% success. I've tested them." He presented a small, crude patch of steel with a weld bead, tested to destruction in a pressure chamber. The break wasn't at the seam. Richardson held the metal, his mind racing. The diver wasn't just proposing a repair, he was indicting the Navy's entire technical doctrine. The risk calculus was horrifying. Authorizing this meant bypassing the Bureau of Ships, risking a court-martial, and potentially losing a multi-million-dollar submarine and its crew if the patch failed during a deep dive. Richardson saw the ghost of Commander Morton's fury and Admiral Lockwood's strategic nightmare, the truck convoy sailing unscathed. Yet Payne's quiet confidence was a siren song. "The mathematics are simple, sir," Payne's voice low. 12 days in dry dock or 10 hours with me in the water. Every day Wahoo isn't hunting. The enemy moves troops, fuel, ammunition. My way, she's back on the patrol line in 48 hours. He revealed his clandestine toolkit: modified generators, handmade electrodes, pre-cut steel patches. This wasn't a theory, it was a prepared operation waiting for a green light. Richardson was cornered. Following regulations meant accepting a defeat in the logistics war. Trusting this maverick diver could mean glory or ruin. He made the call. No paperwork, no official orders. You get 1 night to prep. If anyone asks, this is a damage assessment dive. If you fail, we never had this conversation, and you'll face a court you can't imagine. Payne simply nodded. The impossible solution was now a clandestine mission. The clock was ticking towards a before-sunrise operation that would defy every page in the Navy manual. March 19th, 1943, 0300 hours. Pier 7 was a ghostly silhouette under a blanket of silence and security blackout. On a small, nondescript barge, Robert Payne and 3 trusted crewmen moved like shadows, loading forbidden cargo: a modified welding generator, cables, and a pre-cut steel plate shaped from Wahoo's blueprints. There were no work orders, no Bureau of Ships inspectors, only Lieutenant Commander Richardson's grim, unofficial sanction. The air was thick with the scent of diesel and impending career suicide. Commander Morton appeared on Wahoo's deck, a darker shape in the gloom. He didn't speak of regulations. He spoke to Payne man to man, his voice a low rasp carrying over the still water. "You get yourself killed down there, Chief, and I'll be personally disappointed. This boat needs you in one piece." Payne, already sweating in the heavy canvas of his Mark V suit, gave a taut nod. "The feeling's mutual, sir." This was the point of no return. Success meant a miracle. Failure meant a court-martial for Richardson, disgrace for Payne, and a flooded submarine on the harbor bottom. The barge nudged against Wahoo's wounded flank. The operation, as illegal as it was vital, commenced. At 4:30, weighted by 200 pounds of brass helmet and lead boots, Payne breached the oily surface and began his descent. The world collapsed into a murky green-black void. The only sounds his own ragged breath and the hiss of air from the surface compressor. At 95 feet, the pressure was immense, and nitrogen began its insidious work, threatening to cloud his mind with narcosis. His gloved hands found the gash, a monstrous, jagged maw of torn steel, bigger than reported. He could see into the submarine's innards. Time became his enemy. Navy regs allowed only 15 minutes at this depth before mandatory decompression. He signaled the surface. The patch descended, a dark slab. Maneuvering it alone against the current, he positioned it over the wound. Then he struck the arc. The underwater world exploded in a violent storm of light and boiling bubbles, the 5,000-degree furnace fighting the oppressive cold of the depths. Visibility dropped to 0. Payne worked blind, by touch alone, his mind fighting the drunken haze of narcosis, stitching the steel with short, precise bursts, as per his secret method. On the surface, Richardson clutched a stopwatch, each ticking second an eternity. Below, one man, against all rules, was welding history. March 19th, 1943, 1100 hours. Rear Admiral Charles Lockwood's office was a pressure cooker. The successful, unauthorized repair of Wahoo was the talk of the shipyard. But in this room, it was a capital crime. Commander Paul Hammond from the Bureau of Ships, a man of whose world was defined by technical directives and compliance, stood holding the damning report. His face was a mask of pure bureaucratic outrage. "Let me be unequivocally clear," Hammond said, his voice slicing through the air. You authorized a non-standard, uncertified, and explicitly forbidden procedure on a frontline asset. You risked a multi-million-dollar submarine and the lives of her crew on the word of a diver. Lieutenant Commander Richardson, standing at rigid attention, took the assault. He defended the result. The weld held, the pressure test was passed, Wahoo was ready for sea. The point, Lieutenant Commander, is not the result this time, Hammond exploded. The point is the precedent. You have encouraged the wholesale abandonment of proven procedure. What stops every junior officer from now on ignoring the Bureau's manuals whenever they find them inconvenient? The room was divided, a fierce argument erupting between operational officers demanding flexibility and technical staff horrified by the anarchy. Admiral Lockwood let the storm rage for a moment, his eyes fixed on the vast Pacific map. Then he stood. Silence fell instantly. He walked to the map, his finger tapping a cluster of red pins near Truck. Commander Hammond, how many operational submarines do I have today? Hammond, thrown off script, consulted his notes. 43, sir. And how many do I need to strangle Japan? Lockwood continued, not waiting for an answer. Over 100. I have 43 boats to patrol an ocean that can swallow continents. Every day one spends in dry dock is a gift to the enemy. He turned, his gaze pinning Hammond. You see a violation. I see a commander who used initiative to solve a problem your bureaucracy created. The repair didn't just save 12 days, it saved a patrol that will now sink enemy ships. Hammond tried to protest, citing the 73% failure rate. Lockwood cut him off. Payne's technique had a 100% success rate where it mattered on my submarine. Here are your new orders. Richardson will formalize the procedure. Payne will train every diver at Pearl, and you, Commander, will take this method back to Washington and get it approved. Or you can explain to Admiral King himself why you're refusing a tool that will triple my effective force. The unexpected twist was absolute. Lockwood wasn't apologizing. He was issuing a mandate. The field had overruled Washington. The revolution was now official policy. March 22, 1943. USS Wahoo slipped her lines and slid into the deep channel of Pearl Harbor. Just 72 hours earlier, she had been a wounded beast awaiting a weeks-long convalescence. Now she was a predator returning to the hunt. Commander Morton stood on the bridge, his eyes not on the fading land but on the sea ahead. His orders were direct. Patrol off Truck, intercept convoy traffic, raise hell. The first true test came hours out. Dive, dive, dive. The alarm sounded. The crew, many with knots in their stomachs, watched the hull joints as the ocean squeezed inward. The boat descended, 100 feet, 150, 180. All eyes were on the repaired section. No groan of stressed metal, no terrifying hiss of a high-pressure jet. The patch, welded in darkness and against all doctrine, held firm. A collective, unspoken exhale swept through the boat. Morton allowed himself a grim smile. The gamble had paid off. Robert Payne's stitch in the deep had passed its first trial. Wahoo was not just operational, she was lethal again. Her presence once more a secret terror to the Japanese supply lines she was about to ravage. On March 29th, off Wewak, radar contact resolved into the silhouettes of a Japanese convoy. Morton maneuvered with cold precision. The target was a 5,000-ton Maru, laden with ammunition and vehicle parts destined for the embattled troops in New Guinea. Fire 1, Fire 2. The torpedoes streaked away. 2 hammer-blow impacts tore the night apart. The ship, its deadly cargo ignited, vanished in a violent convulsion of flame and steam, sinking in under 4 minutes. It was a kill that should never have happened. Without Payne's repair, Wahoo would still be in a queue at dry dock number 2. The mathematics of war shifted instantly. Fleet-wide, the data became undeniable. Before Payne's technique, average repair time was 11.3 days. After, it plummeted to 2.4. Operational readiness of the submarine force jumped from 72% to over 90%. The unintended twist was strategic. By slashing repair times, the U.S. had effectively added the equivalent of 17 new submarines to the fleet without laying a single keel. Each boat, like Wahoo, could now attack, absorb damage, and return to the fight in days, not weeks. The Hunter was not only back, it had become relentless.
The proof of concept aboard Wahoo ignited a tactical revolution. The procedure was distilled into a manual, and Robert Payne's first students became instructors themselves. Within weeks, the strategy evolved from desperate dockside repairs to a forward-deployed system. Prefabricated patch kits were stored aboard submarines. Mobile diving and welding barges were positioned at advanced bases like Midway and the newly captured Anchorage at Subic Bay in the Philippines. The new doctrine was simple. A damaged boat should not retreat across the ocean to Pearl Harbor. It should surface after dark at a prearranged rendezvous point, get repaired on the spot, and return to its patrol within 48 hours. In April 1943, USS Harder, SS-257, with a cracked hull from a depth charge attack off Formosa, put this to the test. She limped into Subic Bay at night. A diver trained in Payne's method descended. By dawn, the weld was complete. Harder didn't head home. She returned to her patrol line and 3 days later sank a Japanese destroyer. The enemy now faced a nightmare, a submarine force that could absorb punishment and regenerate in the combat zone, like a hydra growing new heads. From the Japanese High Command's perspective, Allied submarine capabilities became a source of profound confusion and frustration. Senior Japanese commanders noted in their war diaries a disturbing discrepancy. Our anti-submarine forces report with increasing frequency direct hits and heavy damage inflicted on enemy submarines. Oil slicks and debris are observed. Sinkings are claimed. Yet the frequency and geographic spread of attacks do not diminish. It is as if we are wounding ghosts. The mathematics of attrition had been upended. Previously, a successful depth charge attack meant a submarine out of the war for months. Now, it meant a nuisance delay. Between April 1943 and August 1945, Payne's technique was used in over 1,200 critical repairs at sea or in forward bases. The cumulative effect was a strangulation of Japan's maritime lifeline. Merchant tonnage plummeted from 6.4 million tons to less than 1.5 million. Factories starved, fleets lay idle for fuel, and the home islands edged toward famine. The unspoken twist of the chapter was this: the most devastating strategic bombing campaign against Japan was not flown by B-29s, but executed by submarines that refused to stay in dry dock thanks to a welder's stubborn ingenuity. By August 1943, the revolution had a routine. At Pearl Harbor, Chief Petty Officer Robert Payne, now officially recognized as the Pacific Fleet's underwater welding expert, spent his days not in glory, but in the murky training tanks. His classroom was the harbor itself, his students, young divers fresh from school. After surfacing from training his 20th class, a seaman apprentice, Donald Fisher, approached him, awe and nervousness in his eyes. "Chief Payne, when you made that first dive on Wahoo, were you scared?" Payne removed his heavy helmet, water streaming down his face. He considered the question with the same practicality he applied to a weld. "Terrified," he admitted plainly. 95 feet down, narcosis setting in, holding a 5,000-degree arc, knowing that if my hand shook, the patch would fail and good men would drown." He looked at the young diver. "But being scared is acceptable. Being useless isn't."
For Payne, the equation never changed. A submarine in dock was a weapon unused. His pride came not from praise, but from patrol reports noting another boat, repaired by his method, sinking enemy tonnage. He was a technician who had solved a logistics problem, and in his mind, that was simply the job. The scale of his anonymous contribution was staggering, known only to a few in operations and logistics. The data compiled by Lockwood's staff was a silent testament. Over 1,200 critical underwater repairs by war's end, saving an estimated 10,000 days of dry dock time. This translated into over 1,000 additional patrol days and the sinking of more than 700 Japanese ships, a crippling blow to their war economy. Yet Payne received no medals, no public commendations. When war correspondents sought stories of innovation, admirals spoke of new torpedoes or radar. The diver who fixed the hulls was overlooked. The unexpected twist lay in the aftermath. In 1945, the Navy's legal office approached Payne to patent the technique in his name, which would have made him a wealthy man. He refused. "It's not mine to own," he told the astonished JAG officer. "It belongs to every diver and every submariner. You can't patent something that saves lives and wins wars." His method was simply documented as emergency field repair, procedure hull submarine, and entered the manual. Robert Payne chose obscurity over ownership, ensuring his gift to the Navy remained free for every sailor who needed it. On September 2, 1945, Robert Joseph Payne stood on the deck of the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, a silent witness to the surrender he helped engineer. He wore the uniform of a chief petty officer, the rank he would retire with. There were no medals on his chest for the weld that changed the war. The Navy and history moved on. He returned to Biloxi, Mississippi, bought a small fishing boat, and for 30 years told neighbors he fixed boats during the war. When he died in 1981 at age 73, his obituary was a mere 3 lines, noting only that he served as a Navy diver. The story of USS Wahoo, the 1,247 repairs, and the strategic miracle seemed buried with him. The institutional knowledge, however, lived on. His emergency field repair procedure was now a standard chapter in diving manuals, taught to new generations who saw it as just another technique, its origins blurred into bureaucracy. The multi-billion-dollar global industry of underwater welding stood as an unmarked monument to his ingenuity. But at his funeral, an unexpected scene unfolded. 17 men, strangers to each other, gathered at the graveside. They were former submariners, their jackets bearing combat patrol pins. One, a torpedoman from the legendary USS Tang, stepped forward. "We didn't know Chief Payne," he said, his voice rough, "but we knew what his work meant. When depth charges cracked our hulls, we didn't have to run home. Someone would meet us in a bay in the dark and fix us. We stayed on patrol. We kept fighting. We came home because our boats could take a punch and keep hunting. We are here because of him." In that moment, the legacy found its name. Robert Payne's true memorial was not in stone, but in the thousands of ships and structures maintained by his method, and in the quiet recognition that the most profound weapons are sometimes not those that destroy, but those that persevere, held together by the courage and skill of one man who refused to accept the word impossible.